Alright, what is up guys? I'm Conrad and I am super excited to announce the -G TC-v1. So you might be wondering what that is. The TC-v1 is a flat rail LCG conversion kit, in this case for the TRX4 Sport or for the TRX4 313 wheelbase. So this is just my Crete body from J Concepts. So we'll take this off, and what it is it's not just rails or it's not just carbon fiber rails where you have to piece everything together. This is a full kit that includes the rails, the skid, the sliders, the primary drive and spur gear, and the transfer case. So all you have to add are your axles, your links, your shocks, and your body posts, and then of course your electronics. So what that does is it turns your TRX4 into like an LCG belly dragger crawler. Now, there's custom builds are nothing new. A lot of people have been doing it, but if you're new to custom builds and you don't really understand what that's for, the reason why people build flat-railed LCG crawlers is because they crawl much better. So that could be for competition, or that could just be if you're like going out with your friends and just trying to see who can pull the sickest line, right? The TRX4, the Axial SCX10, the Capra, they crawl well, but they can crawl a lot better. And the reason why is with a flat rail build, you have better suspension geometry, you have better skid clearance, and then it also brings the weight and, as a benefit, the center of gravity much lower. And so for rock crawling, the weight and center of gravity is kind of everything, right? So let's go down to the table. I'll kind of give you an overview of the build, and then we'll come back up and talk a little bit more about it. All right guys, let's go over the build and some of the features of the kit. So we've got a carbon fiber flat rail chassis system, okay? Instead of a typical 3-gear transmission, we're running a primary drive. The motor is mounted really low. So the motor's down here, and it's kind of like in line with the front axle. So that's keeping weight low. And then we've got our spur gear, prop shaft, to this really small transfer case. So, everything is kept really low, and when you're talking about crawling, you want all of your sprung weight to be minimized. And sprung weight is anything that is connected to the top of the shocks, so it's all under spring tension. Unsprung weight is anything below the shocks, so your axles. And then if you look at my axles, I've got brass on there. That's unsprung weight, that's good. But everything above the axles or above the shocks, you want to be lightweight, hence the carbon fiber. So this is all of the parts are 3D printed. Jess's 3D prints are super high quality. They're actually stronger, a lot stronger than Axial plastic. They're probably on par with like Traxxas plastic. It's funny because we were crawling yesterday and Jess is testing his SCX10-3 prototype, and he like flipped off of a rock probably about 2 feet and broke his panhard mount on his axle, even though on the other side the panhard is connected to 3D print. So we've got a lay down servo mount. That was my idea. We should probably talk about the rubber bands. So you'll see here on the back and on the, well, not on the front, but you'll see on the back that there's this like rubber band mounting point. You see these like grid of holes. That's so you can adjust the rubber band tension. And what the rubber bands are for is droop. So you'll see that a lot of people, they either run pin springs or spacers internally. And what that does is it sucks the shock closed to lower CG still. What we do is use rubber bands because you're not having to do anything internal, and you can adjust this on the fly. Like I can adjust the screw position to adjust tension, or I can adjust how the rubber bands are looped to make them tighter or looser. And then in the front, the rubber bands are just kind of looped up over the shock towers. And again, like in this configuration, they're looped at the axle, and then I kind of drape them over the top across to the opposite post. And that's a pretty good tension. Like it still allows the axle to fall, but it's just offering some resistance so it'll go back down to full droop. And then if I take out the loop at the axle and just, maybe I can show you. So we take it off. And if I run both ends of the rubber band up, hopefully this is coming through. You can run both ends up, and since both ends of the rubber band are looped up, that offers more tension than just looping it around the axle. So yeah, that's why we run rubber bands and nothing internal, because you can adjust it on the trail. We just feel like it's much better than pin springs. What else? The bumper, right now the uprights are 3D printed. We found that those aren't durable enough, so the kits will actually come with carbon fiber uprights. That's just something we found out like only a couple of weeks ago, that these uprights break too easy. But that's like the only 3D printed part on the whole truck that any of us test drivers have really broken. You'll see the link riser on the back. That's an optional part. I highly recommend getting it. What the link riser does is it adds anti-squat, so when you're climbing, it's kind of pressing the wheels into the surface of the rock. So you definitely want the link riser, depending on your geometry. You'll see that there's not optional mounting holes for the upper links like you would see on some other builds. And that's because this is specifically designed for the TRX4, right? The upper link, throw this back on. So you can kind of see on the side here, the upper link mounted on the outside of the rail. That'll be included. It's mounted on the outside of the rail to clear the motor because, again, the motor is mounted so low. So yeah, you'll see it's really low CG, so much so that you can stand it up on its side. Make me look like a fool. You stand it up on its side, and it'll just balance there because it doesn't have enough weight to pull it over. And then that's the underside of the skid. You see the lipo mount. All right, guys, let's go back up and we'll wrap this portion of the video up. Okay, guys, so that was kind of like a close-up look at the TC-v1. The retail price for the kit is going to be $300. And, you know, if you compare that to the cost, if you've ever looked at building your own LCG crawler, you'll, you know, once you add in the transmission, the rails, the custom sized links, it adds up pretty quick. So $300, I think, is pretty fair. Now, I didn't design this. This was designed by a guy named Jess here in Boise, Idaho. Somebody that I crawl with on a regular basis. He came up with this idea over winter because here in Idaho we start crawling usually in winter because they drain out the local reservoir and it opens up a lot of cool crawling spots. So he came up with this idea because, again, the process of building a custom LCG crawler, it can be kind of daunting because you have to order from so many different places. Then you have to worry about wait times, then you have to worry about stock. And it can just be confusing because you have to know what skid to get and what size links and what size drive shafts. And I mean, you know, and if that's something you enjoy, that's cool. I'm not taking a dig at that. But what Jess wanted to do was take out all of that guesswork and just throw everything into a kit. And the performance, well, you know, we'll take it out to Lucky Peak, so, you know, I can run some lines. But the performance is insane. You know, you've got a 5.2, this one is 5.2 pounds with brass on the front axle. So it's 5.2 pounds, and then, let me get a lipo. And all of the weight is really low. Like if you look at it from the side, let's see if we can get that to show. If you can see the motor is in line with the axle, like that's how low it is. And then you've got the transfer case, which is really small, really low on the skid. And then the lipo mounts right behind the motor on the skid. And so again, it's keeping the CG really low, and then so that's with the lipo in it. And that's a pretty, for like a comp crawler, that's a pretty big lipo. It's a 3S 1500, so I could get it lighter if I wanted to. But yeah, so that's kind of an overview of the build and the kit. Now we're gonna take it out to Lucky Peak, and we'll see how it performs, because I actually haven't driven this yet. I didn't want to scratch it before I made this video. So we'll take it out, see how it does in the rocks, and then we'll kind of follow it from there. Alright guys, so that was just some running footage of the -G TC-v1. The TC stands for TRX4 carbon, and so Jess is currently working on two other models, for the Capra and the SCX10 III. So the Capra is going to be called the CC-v1, and then the SCX10 is the SC-v1. Some things I forgot to mention in the intro with the carbon fiber and the rubber bands. You're going to want to, at least where the rubber bands go over the rails, you're going to want to sand those down so they don't cut through the rubber bands. Oh, lipo straps. The kit's not going to come with a lipo strap, just because Jess didn't want to bump up the cost too much. But I got these on Amazon for, I think they're like $8 for a 5-pack. And so what you're looking for is a 16mm by 200mm, and those fit great. You might have to just cut like an inch off of the end of the strap, just so when you're strapping it down next to the prop shaft, there's not too much slack. The lipos, again, this is a 3S 1500. Basically, the battery tray is sized for a lipo that's about 28mm wide and roughly 30mm tall. Not those dimensions. So, like if you're looking at the smaller lipos, like the 3S 850s, those are usually about 28mm wide. So that should be fine. My servo is making noise. Oh, yeah, I didn't mention my electronics either. So, the motor is a Holmes Hobby V2 Snubnose 1800 kV paired to a Holmes Hobbies Crawlmaster Mini ESC. Really good ESC. It's when you're at low throttle, it's got the RPM lock, so it'll just kind of keep slow crawling, even if it, you know, runs into an obstruction, it'll just keep going. That's really nice. It's really lightweight. Spectrum receiver, and then this little deal here is just the Castle Beck because the ESC doesn't have its own Beck. Pretty good little combo. And then the servo is an AGF RC 55 kg, so that's like 700 ounces and 0.11 speed. Got that on Amazon for like 115 bucks, but I think they're up to like 150. Another good AGF RC servo on Amazon, the one that I have in my Capra build, it's a 45 kg, but it's a 12 volt servo, so you don't need a Beck. It just wires to your power connector, and that way you don't have to worry about adding a Beck. But then again, that wouldn't work with the Crawlmaster because the Crawlmaster needs a Beck. So in my Capra build, I'm running the Castle Mamba Micro ESC, which doesn't need a Beck, obviously. So yeah, that was the running footage here at Lucky Peak. The truck did really great. It doesn't perform much different than the prototype. The prototype, there wasn't like a huge weight difference. It was just aluminum because that was faster to get cut. And then just ordered the carbon in bulk. So it didn't perform much different, but it was fun to finally get this thing out on the rocks with my creep body. I painted this body like months ago in anticipation, little impatient. That side hill line down at the bottom, maybe I'll overlay the footage again. The side hill line at the bottom with a little bump in it, so far only these builds can do that line, because when you go over the bump, you're side hilling and then you go over the bump and it's tipping it like it's tipping the front axle. I don't know, it must be like 50 degrees, I'm guessing. And most rigs will tip off right there. For some reason, my Capra build can't do it either. The Capra build, it does have a bigger motor in it, so it might just be just enough weight pulling it off the side. Even though, according to Jess's software, the CC-v1 and the TC-v1 have similar CG. He can plot the CG in his software when he is, you know, working on the designs of these things. But for some reason, the TC-v1, mine and Jess's, are the only trucks that have done that line. I had a guy out here a couple of weeks ago. He had a full custom build from a different popular brand. And he tried that line for about an hour. I'm not taking a dig at him. He's a great guy. We're buddies. But he tried that line for a long time. When he couldn't do it, he took his body off to drop the weight. That didn't work. So then he swapped to a 3S 850 lipo, and he still couldn't get it. But he was running like a metal 3-gear tranny, and those 3-gear trannies are really tall, so they raise the CG a lot. But yeah, so the TC-v1 is the only truck so far, like in Boise, that we know of that have done that side hill line. And again, it's just because the CG is just so low. But yeah, guys, I don't want to run on too long. I think we'll wrap it up there. I might do another video in a week or two with some build tips, but I think the build's pretty straightforward. There's going to be a manual online when you order the kit, like a full manual, like how many custom builds come with manuals. And then I think they should go on sale here like tomorrow or the day after. So thanks for watching, guys. If you're not in the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. I'll be on there a lot, helping answer any questions or anything like that, and then posting all of my content as always. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I can't wait to see pics of your builds. It's gonna be sick. All right, guys.